All right, guys. So, like I said, we have 20 different techniques that we're gonna go over, and my paper's really large, and for some reason the document camera, the viewpoint of it isn't very large, so I'm just gonna kind of go through like this. So we have solid flat wash, graded wash, variegated wash, glazing, wet on wet, wet in wet, dry brush, and detail brush. So some of these I'll be doing two different things next to each other, but they might be kind of similar. You might use the brush the same type of way. So if it has an and thing, you might be doing like a side-by-side kind of thing. Negative painting, brush lift out, scratching wet and dry, salt, water blooms and splatter. There's sponge, magic eraser. Now there's there's like two different types of magic eraser. There's like a regular like pencil eraser, and it's called a magic eraser. But this magic eraser is the kind that you've seen that somebody you know maybe uses for cleaning. It's by Mr. Clean, and it's called a magic eraser. Huh? Yeah. Yeah, the ball-headed guy. So what it does is, I don't know like the science behind it, but it cleans off some watercolor, so it's pretty interesting. Sandpaper, watercolor pencil, opaque versus transparent. This is kind of difficult, so I'm going to turn this one a little bit. Rubbing alcohol, okay. Cling wrap or saran wrap, same thing. Tissue, so like a tissue you would use to sneeze or whatever kind of tissue. And then straw, okay. There's a lot of other ones too, but these are the ones that we'll go over. Now, two of them that aren't on here that you guys have already done before is the mask, okay? So the masking fluid that we used for the last project, where you paint it on, let it dry, paint over top of it, and then rub it off, right? And whatever you put there stays white. So that's one that you can use. So that's actually number 21 that you could use as one of your examples. And then another one that everybody's going to use, that we've been using since we started watercoloring this year, has been tape resist, okay? And just like when we put the tape down and then you paint over top of it and then we pull the tape back up, wherever the tape was, it has resisted the watercolor, right? So that's another technique too. So another thing that you can do with that same technique, other than just putting the tape down and painting over top of it, is you can put the paint down and then you can take an X-Acto knife and cut out a shape and then peel up the excess that you don't want and then paint over it and then pull it up, and whatever shape you cut out and left there is still there. So in other words, let's say I put a piece of tape down and then I drew like a little tree on top of it, like the branches and everything. So I could go in with the X-Acto knife, cut out the tree shape, take off what wasn't part of the tree shape, paint over it, okay, lift it up, and then whatever was the tree shape would still be white, and then like, let's say you painted blue around it, would be blue. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Yeah? Okay. So, I have my watercolors out. So these are the tube watercolors. They are probably my favorite just because I feel like they're really versatile and I feel like they have really nice pigment. So I know that the camera translation here isn't that great on color, that you're probably just seeing like, those look like three blacks next to each other, but this is actually a medium brown, darker brown, and black here. This is a dark green, this is a lighter green, and then lime, so light yellow green. This is a dark blue, a medium blue, a lighter blue, and then a light blue. So you see I squeezed out about maybe like a pea size or a little bigger of each color. The good thing about this is when it dries hard, you can still go back with it, add water to it, and it's just as good. That's the difference between watercolor and acrylic. Acrylic dries, you're done. You got to peel it off, throw it away, or use it for collaging, okay? So I have my watercolors here. There's also watercolor concentrate that's already in liquid form, so it just looks like colored water, but it's really pigmented. That you use the same way as far as just squeezing it out and using it straight or diluting it more. And then there's also the little watercolors that you've probably been using since you were like a little kid that look like they're in a little palette, and you put water on top of them, let it soak, and then swirl your brush around. There's also two different ones that are in that realm. So you have the palette watercolor thing, but there's ones that look more like a gel. They look more, they're more transparent, so there's a tendency that you can see through them more, and they dry with more of like a clear transparency look. And there's also another type of watercolor palette that you may have seen that seems to be more chalky looking. It actually kind of looks like eyeshadow in a way, and that's because the binder that's in it is more chalky. So you'll see that it dries more like it has a dust kind of to it, or it dries more matte looking. It's still transparent, but it dries with more like of a haze rather than it drying with like a crystal clear kind of transparency. Does that make sense? Yes? Okay. One thing I want to tell you before we start too is no matter what, your watercolors are going to dry lighter. So when you put them on the paper and you're like, oh my gosh, I love that color blue, know that it's going to dry lighter than what it is when it's wet, okay? So if you want it to be a little darker, make it a little darker when it's wet, knowing that it's going to dry lighter, okay? Now, this is really good watercolor paper. This is the Arches. This is the best of the best. This is great watercolor paper. It's 140 weight cold press. Cold press is what you normally want to use. They also make hot press. Hot press is kind of more like illustration watercolor paper. It's for like when you want like extremely bright colors, but cold press is usually better. I have my water cup right here, and then I have some brushes, okay, and I have a Kleenex for later, and then I also have a little spray bottle, okay. So first thing that we're gonna do is our solid flat wash. So I'm gonna try to move some of this a little bit so we can get a good angle here, and I also have a little rag, okay. All right. So first thing we're going to do, I think I'm going to work with one of these blues. So I'm just taking a brush full of water, and I'm going to pick up some of this blue, put it here, get myself some more water, and I'm just diluting that. And you can tell that's still really, really pigmented, right? So for the flat wash, you're just having your color mixed out, and then what you're going to do is you're just going to paint. So you want to really load that brush, and you're just swiping back and forth, and you're not stopping in between. So I'm not like stopping there, taking a break, and coming back. I am continuing to paint where I left off at the bottom, because what I'm wanting is the same color all the way down, okay? So there's my flat wash, real easy, okay? Super simple, simplest one, all right? So now I'm gonna rinse my brush. This is really good for skies, anything like that, okay? Anytime you want something to look nice and flat in one color. Graded wash. So this is where you'll start off with a color, and it'll be darker up top, and then it will start to fade out as you go down, okay? So get lighter. Now you could do this from the bottom and go up. we're gonna do from the top and go down. Same type of thing, okay? So I'm gonna do, I think this green, this medium green. So same thing, gonna grab some. So a little of this pigment in water goes a long way, okay? Now I want that first swipe to be really pigmented, so I grabbed a little more paint to mix over here. Okay, so now up here my paper's dry. So I did my first swipe just like you would if you were doing a regular flat wash, okay? And now I'm gonna get my brush wet just a little bit, rake it off, start to drag this down. So again, I'm gonna get my brush, wet it a little bit again. I'm not swirling it around, just kind of dunked it. So again, dunk it. I'm kind of wiping that little bead of water off. Okay? And something else that can aid in this process is having your paper kind of at an angle like this, okay? Because gravity is going to help pull that dark layer down and keep bringing it down as it goes. Does that make sense? So when you're doing this, your paper is going to be smaller and you're going to have it taped to a board, which is the purpose of being able to kind of tip it up so that gravity can help you, okay? You don't have to do it like that. You can do it like I did it, like this, but gravity has a tendency to help you out when you do it like that, okay? For these purposes, to kind of like show that even more, I'm gonna tip it real quick and kind of go over it just a little bit. So here was my darkest green. Okay, again, dunk. Dunk, wipe off. Now I'm going to swirl around a little because I want it to be the lightest. And then that gravity is kind of helping it out a little bit, okay? So, make sense? Graduated wash, yes? Okay. So the next one is going to be variegated wash. You're fine. Oh, okay. Will you give that to Mackenzie? Okay. So, variegated wash. This is going to be colors that go well together. So we're thinking like analogous colors, colors that blend really well together. And so you get a transition from one color to another. Okay. So let's start off. I think I'm going to start off with, let's do, what do I want to do? Let's do red. And then I'm going to do an orange. Whoops. And then I'm going to do the light yellow. So I'm going to start off with my red. So I'm starting off with a clean brush, okay? Yeah. Oh.